Well, ladies and gents, this is Unbiased History. Augustus, the first emperor. We got to the first emperor now. Last video we saw Caesar and how he dominated most of Europe. Caesar was just a badass. Obviously, it's just a Greekoid myth that he went to the Alexander statue and said, I didn't achieve anything near as Alexander did. That's just Greekoid myth. That didn't really happen. Obviously, this is unbiased history. So this is true. It didn't happen. So when I loved it how Caesar was just dominant, he just basically dominated most of Europe, dominated Gauls, dominated Britain, just, got to a certain point in Britain like I can't be bothered and just walked back, claiming victory, like I'm enough, I don't want more. I love how, the Battle of Alesia, where Caesar just basically built walls around the city to, cut off the supply. So basically the city would starve and eventually, claim defeat. So that was just great, man. The Caesar's tactics, starting to feel like more Napoleon tactics. Obviously, it's the other way around because Caesar was first before Napoleon. But yeah, so you could see the greatness in him already using tactics. One thing that I've seen in so far, that if you have the best generals of the world that ever existed, they will always have some tactics, unusual tactics like this. So I loved it. People would say, that's not really unusual tactics. People do lots of that, starve city and cut off supplies. But not at the time of Rome and this time. Later, sure, but not around this time. So I think Caesar's, put on lots of military standards too that people used later on. So I love all this. He went to Egypt, allied with Cleopatra, and made her pharaoh of Egypt or whatever. And then with his glorious reign as let's be honest, he was the first emperor. He was the first emperor, not Augustus. But he didn't last long. He didn't want to call emperor. He didn't want the crown. And yeah, so in the end he got killed by his son, adopted son, but still adopted son. So he was killed by that, and Senate. That's where it ended. It wasn't so much detailed video. Obviously, how much detail can you put in one video? But somebody has suggested to me some other channel that goes into detail about Caesar. I'm gonna check that out because I'm really fascinated by him. So yeah, let's watch the first emperor, Augustus, Unbiased History.
Pain, sadness, betrayal. Only the gods may ever know exactly what Caesar felt as he bled on the Senate's floor.
Damn.
But among all the uncertainties his assassination raised for
Betrayal, definitely betrayal, because I know one of his last words was, "You too, my son," to Brutus.
Rome, these were certain. The Senate was dominated by treacherous murderers, the barbarians ready to strike, and its people hid in their
Look at their eyes.
their homes.
This is unbiased history.
Decades
Unbiased.
of violence, death, and decadence. It was in this world that our hero found himself in. His tale began during the year of Cicero and Hybrida, for while Caesar was feeling disgusted by the tyranny shown by the Senate, his niece, Adia, had given birth to a son, named Gaius Octavius Furinius. With his father dying nolo when he was just 4 years old, and his new stepfather never giving a single shit about him, Octavian was raised by his grandmother Julia, the elder sister of Julius Caesar, whom Octavian would greatly impress as he delivered her eulogy years later. Octavian later joined the College of Pontiffs, where he met and befriended Marcus Agrippa, a plebeian of unrivaled strength and military skill, and Gaius Maecenas, an equestrian experienced in Roman politics. With their help, Augustus compensated for the poor health the gods gave him in exchange for such a high intellect, making him very
Augustus' name is Octavius.
prone to illnesses, which he refused to let hold him back. Growing up during the Civil War, it wasn't long before he heard Caesar was off to fight in Africa. He implored to join him, but was held back by his overprotective mother. When Caesar returned, Octavius approached him for the first time. He told him Agrippa's brother had fought in Cato's army, and so asked for his pardon. Caesar readily granted his wish, and Agrippa was so thankful he would become his most loyal friend. Later, as Caesar was preparing to fight in Hispania, Octavian managed to convince his mother to let him go, only for him to be struck by an illness and then get shipwrecked in enemy territory after recovering. By then, Caesar had just won the Battle of Munda, and when he found out Octavian had braved the countryside to find him, he was convinced his nephew was destined for greatness. He then sent Octavian to study in Macedonia, returning to Rome, where, not long after, he would find himself getting stabbed 27 times by the Senate. Which begs the question, where the fuck was Mark Antony
27 times. I mean, damn.
during all that? Actually, Brutus never went after him. He still had some shreds of dignity in his treacherous heart. Shame the Senate didn't. Once Antony realized he wasn't in danger, as consul, he took hold of Caesar's will. In it, he was posthumously adopting Octavian as his son and heir, inheriting his name and fortune. He rushed to inform Octavian about it, and it was at this moment that Cleopatra attacked. You see, Cleopatra had made use of all that semen Caesar had pumped into her, absorbing his divine essence and using it to fuel her Eastern black magic, which she used to cast a mind control spell on Antony, the one she saw as the surest way to
This is historical true, by the way, all of this.
take power over Rome and destroy Aeneas' legacy once and for all. Now a puppet of Cleopatra, Antony brought the assassins to the table and negotiate. They were to be pardoned of their crimes, and Caesar's reforms left intact. He also agreed not to talk ill of the assassins to the plebs, as he was to host his funeral oration. But when the day came, and the sight of his dead friend hit his eyes, Cleopatra's spell temporarily broke. Enraged once more, but still a man of his word, Antony didn't badmouth the Senate, but simply reminded the plebs of all the great things Caesar did for them, and Rome at large, letting the assassins' actions speak for themselves. The plebs were driven by
Yeah, okay, I think what really happened was, I think he was like, Caesar's dead, we are in vulnerable position, there's no point of fighting Senate right now. So he was like, making peace with Senate, but at the same time was pissed off what Senate did. So he was just trying to, cool things down, I think.
Antony's eulogy, running through the streets to sack and burn all property belonging to any of Caesar's assassins, who were then forced to flee the city scared for their lives. By then, the news of Caesar's death had reached Octavian, together with his last wishes. His mother begged him not to accept the adoption. His friends advised him to take the Macedonian legions and march on Rome. But when destiny came calling for Octavian, neither cowardice nor pure violence would suffice. Through cunning and virtue, he saw his duty to ensure his adopted father's legacy. His mind made, Octavian sailed to Brundisium with his friends, there meeting with Caesar's veteran legions, who were preparing for the Parthian campaign. Being recognized as Caesar's chosen heir, the legions hailed him as their new leader. This allowed Octavian to get to Rome, and what did he find when he got there? That Antony, Caesar's best friend, was dancing between hating and allying with the Senate. Octavian could smell that Eastern magic was in the air, and instantly realized Cleopatra was behind this. Octavian openly denounced Antony's pardon of the Senate, driving more of Caesar's veterans to his side, including 2 of the Macedonian legions. Seeing where the wind was blowing, Cicero denounced Antony in a series of scathing orations, driving public opinion to Octavian's side.
I don't understand this. Why is Octavian not going to the, Antony and like, you know what? You are loyal to Caesar. Now, be loyal to me. I'm going to avenge Caesar or something like that. Why is he denouncing him and making him eventually enemy? Because it doesn't feel like, look, Anthony is like they said, is jumping back and forth like, so sometimes badmouth the Senate, sometimes doesn't, because like I said, it makes sense that he doesn't want to pick fight with Senate because it doesn't feel like he's in position to. But with Octavian back, he could join forces with him. Why is he denouncing him and doing things like that?
With just how powerful Octavian was becoming, Cleopatra ordered her servants to change strategy. Mark Antony then renounced his pardon of the Senate, banishing them from Rome, and ordering it to give him Cisalpine Gaul to govern, instead of Macedonia. Antony then marched north with his last 3 legions to force Cisalpine Gaul's governor to abdicate, a one named Decimus Brutus, who violently refused to abdicate. The Senate then declared Antony an enemy of the state, sending both consuls Pansa and Hirtius to defeat him. They didn't have enough legions, so they called on Octavian to join forces with them. Wait, hold the fuck on. Octavian joining his Caesarian legionaries to help the Senate rescue Caesar's assassin from Caesar's best friend and his Caesarian legionaries?
Exactly, that's what I was saying before, and as soon as he said that, Octavian agreed to help them, what the hell is happening, man? Join forces with, Anthony, what is this?
Well, you might not see it now, pleb, but it was all part of Octavian's master plan to save Rome. And so he marched with the Senate north. And before Pansa could join his forces with Hirtius and Octavian, Antony suddenly ambushed him, obliterating his forces and severely injuring Pansa, only for them to be his turn to be ambushed by Hirtius.
I love that animation, he's like whining little bitch. Whenever something happens, they start to cry like that.
who then almost obliterated his forces. Anthony then retreated to siege Decimus at Mutina, where Hirtius and Octavian faced him again. As they charged Octavian's camp, Hirtius was killed in the midst of fighting, with Octavian personally rescuing his body away from the battle. At the end of the day, Anthony's army was scattered, with him fleeing north of the Alps to link with Lepidus. Decimus instantly set pursuit, but Octavian just chilled with his 8 legions. Abandoned, Decimus found himself locked between the Alps, Anthony's and Lepidus' legions, and hostile Gallic tribes.
Yeah.
Not long after, a Gallic chieftain delivered
I love how this channel always in the past I've seen wherever, it's like, they are just whining a little bit, just crying and, throwing a tantrum. That's how they do it. So every time there's something, they just cry.
Decimus' head to Anthony, who then received a letter from Octavian, wishing for them to talk. The three Caesarians later met, abandoning their past differences and forming the Second Triumvirate, with the goal to avenge Caesar's murder and carry on his legacy. The first order of business regarded the Senate, whom, everyone agreed, needed nothing short of a massive purge. Drafting a list of 300 senators to kill, the triumvirs took control of Rome, running a senatorial killing spree and appropriating their wealth. Among the killed were Cicero, who later had his hands chopped off and posted on the forum by Anthony, just like a true Caesarian would do. With the remaining senators now being a combination of the ones Caesar appointed earlier and the ones too cowardly to object, the Senate proclaimed the Second Triumvirate a legal institution that gave all 3 members dictatorial authority. To challenge the rule, both Brutus and Cassius had amassed 100,000 legionaries in Macedonia. To confront them, Lepidus agreed to fork over 7 of his legions to Anthony and Octavian. And yeah, he just agreed to doing that. No ifs or buts. Some men are just servile by nature. When the triumvirates landed on Greece, the liberators blockaded their supply lines, hoping to starve the troops out as they held on their fortifications between mountains and swamps. But it was through those very swamps that Mark Antony attacked, surprising Cassius' legions and taking over their camp. And when he heard that Brutus had taken over the triumvirs' abandoned camps, he killed himself out of pure spite. Anthony then clashed with Brutus, routing him to the nearest hill, where, defeated, he realized just how much of a traitorous bastard he was, and then killed himself.
I really am a traitor, aren't I? You're like, yup, yeah.
What a shame. After the battle, Octavian cut off Brutus' head and threw it at the feet of a statue of Julius Caesar, his death now finally avenged. The triumvirate victorious, the Republic's provinces were divided among the free men, with Gaul agreed to be left alone. And wait a fucking minute, who the fuck gave his planet to Lepidus? Yeah, that's right. But there was still the question of Sextus Pompey, who had re-emerged after taking control of both Sicily and the senatorial fleet, using it to blockade Italy from grain supplies. And now Octavian was left ruling between hungry plebs demanding wheat to his right, veteran legionnaires demanding retirement lands to his left, and Sextus Pompey dabbing at his boats at the coast. All while Cleopatra had Anthony licking her feet, and Lepidus watched paint dry in Africa, or whatever the dude did. Despite these difficulties, Octavian still honored his dead great-uncle, raising him to the status of a god, thus making Octavian Divi Filius, the son of a god. He then held a big party to celebrate the gods, dressing himself as Apollo, the old Trojan sun deity of logic and reason, whom Octavian held an unexpectable affinity for. But after that, Anthony's wife and brother flew a revolt and took over Rome, overthrowing Octavian and finally killing... Just kidding. Anthony himself didn't seem to care about his wife's death though. I wonder why. But what happened next was really forced to care. The governor of Gaul...
Is this exaggerated or is this how it was? Was Anthony just too devoted to, Cleopatra? Damn, and Cleopatra, even in the Assassin's Creed Origins and, even some histories as Cleopatra has this weird seductress power, isn't it?
Gaul had recently died, and the legions dared then declared their allegiance to Octavian's banner. This sudden change in the power scale triggered Cleopatra, and thus Anthony, to no end. She immediately sent her slave to invade Italy, ally with Sextus and kill Octavian, whom had actually just married Sextus' aunt-in-law, so that didn't really work out. Also, when the legions met at Brundisium, they simply refused to fight Octavian. Left hanging by their armies, Cleopatra then had no choice but to have Anthony renew the Second Triumvirate, sealing it with a marriage of Octavian's sister, Octavia, to the recently widowed Anthony. And what about Sextus? Well, Octavian allowed him to keep his islands to lift the blockade, later pardoning all exiled Roman families since Fulvius Chimp out. Among these included Tiberius Claudius Nero. An extremely auspicious name, isn't it? But chill, he wasn't any of the 3 people you just imagined right now. although his son was. But it's his wife we're gonna talk about, Livia Drusilla, whom, after personally meeting Octavian, instantly fell in love, divorced her husband, and convinced Octavian to get on with her. He seemed into it, so divorced Scribonia just after she gave birth to his daughter Julia, and married Livia just after her second son Drusus was born. And yeah, I know, names. This is the Julio-Claudian dynasty, you pleb, get used to it. But peace didn't last long, as Sextus, unhappy over just ruling the islands he had re-established the blockade of Italy, destroying Octavian's fleet shortly after. To deal with Sextus once and for all, Octavian had Agrippa, by then governor of Gaul, elected as consul, whom proceeded to cut through a lake near Naples and forming an inner harbor, training a new fleet of bigger, stronger ships to face Sextus. The years passed, and the second triumvirate was renovated, this time sealed by a military exchange, 120 of Antony's ships for 4 of Octavian's legions. Why Octavian needed more ships we already know. But what's with Cleopatra needing more legions? To invade Parthia, of course, with 100,000 men, 25,000 of which would freeze to death in the Armenian mountain ranges as their siege weapons were destroyed and the legions were forced to retreat.
What the hell?
Seeing how stupidly Cleopatra was wasting her men's lives, Octavian never bothered delivering those 4 legions.
What the hell? Anthony sucks in the battle apparently. How did that many people die? What the hell?
Instead, he coordinated a combined attack with Agrippa and Lepidus to take down Sextus. As Agrippa's newly trained ships faced Sextus' main fleet, both Lepidus and Octavian invaded the island, taking town after town. And after Agrippa crushed his fleet in the Battle of Naulochus, Sextus fled once more, this time to Anatolia, where he was executed without trial by its local governor. And that was that. The blockade of Italy was lifted, Sicily finally taken, and wait, is this serious? Lepidus actually tried to claim the island for himself? In answer to this hilarious move, Octavian used his charisma to have all of Lepidus' legions defect to his side, then demoting and kicking him out of the triumvirate, being left to live a quiet life as Pontifex Maximus in rural Italy with his family, doing what he did best. Absolutely nothing. The Republic's provinces were now divided between Octavian's west and Antony's east, and just at the border between them, Octavian carried out a series of campaigns in Pannonia, annexing it into Illyricum. Keep that overall image in mind, it'll be relevant in like 5 episodes. But what's relevant right now was just how tight Cleopatra's grip on Antony had become. Not only had Antony completely scored his wife Octavian in favor of Cleopatra, but he had several children with her, celebrated triumphs outside Rome, and dressed, lived, and spoke like an Egyptian. What's more, Octavian managed to get a copy of Antony's will after his death, and when he saw it for the first time, he wasn't sure if he should laugh, explode in anger, or outright vomit, so he just read it to the Senate. In what would later be remembered as the Gibbs of Alexandria, Anthony proclaimed his will to... Anthony proclaimed his will to have Cleopatra and her children inherit all...
Too many quotation marks there. Anthony.
All of Rome's eastern provinces, with Cleopatra being claimed Queen of Kings, and her son with Caesar, King of Kings. Outraged at how Cleopatra had made Antony betray the Roman people.
This is ridiculous, man. Cleopatra has real, seductress power, doesn't it? How does she made Antony do all these things? Even made her, Queen of Kings or whatever he said. That's just effed up, man.
With the second triumvirate now expired once more, the Senate declared war on her. To start out hostilities, Cleopatra and her slave Antony sailed to Greece to later invade Italy. But stopping them short was Agrippa, whom, together with his veteran sailors, had crushed Antony's allied fleets and cornered them into Actium. Cleopatra then eagerly awaited behind the front lines for an opportunity to attack, but her battle plans had been uncovered by Octavian, whom ordered Agrippa to hold his position. With her legions defecting to Octavian's side more and more, Cleopatra ordered Antony to attack. What ensued was nothing short of a massacre. Agrippa's veteran sailors completely annihilated Cleopatra's fleet, and seeing that defeat was imminent, she cowardly fled the battle through a gap in the lines, followed by her slave all the way back to Egypt.
Oh god,
the war was lost. Cleopatra could do nothing but order Antony to muster as many troops as possible before Octavian's arrival, but with all of his generals and troops defecting, there was no point. Unwilling to lift her spell over him, she had him fall on his own sword. But Cleopatra, being a woman, really sucked at suicide, so she just watched Antony wail in agony for a while before he died.
Oh, this is just effed up, man. What the hell? How did she make Antony do all these things? Doesn't even make sense.
A last moment of entertainment before her own time came. Not much later came Octavian, meeting with Cleopatra to discuss the terms of her surrender. In a last-ditch effort, she tried to cast her demonic spells on him, but as the divine descendant of Aeneas, Octavian was completely immune to her eastern tricks, later having her son Caesarion killed, thus depriving her of her last political asset. Unable to cope with being bested by Aeneas' progeny once again, Dido's reincarnation, now aware of her incompetence at suicide, simply let herself be bit by a venomous snake, cursing Rome once again. She will be back. Octavian would then annex Egypt as his own personal property, later visiting the mausoleum of Alexander the Great, and laughing at his pathetic life. For when Alexander became king, he was 20. When Octavian was adopted by Caesar, he was 19. When Alexander took 13 years to conquer the shithole of the East, Octavian took the same time to subdue the entire Mediterranean. And while Alexander's empire disintegrated the nanosecond after he died, Octavian would lay the foundations for the greatest empire in human history. And so, to commemorate his victory...
Yeah, alright. Alexander literally conquered all the places. Augustus didn't really conquer, Caesar did, didn't he? He just took on from all the pieces that were left. That is true though, that he's gonna build the foundation for the, one of the biggest empire that ever existed. That's true. Because Alexander the Great, whatever he conquered didn't last long, because he didn't last long. But whatever Augustus will do will last for an extremely long time. That is true.
Victories, Octavian celebrated 3 triumphs. The first for finally bringing the barbarians of Pannonia.
Apparently that's LED screens there.
To heel. The second together with Agrippa for beating Foe and Cleopatra in Actium. And a third one for the conquest of Egypt, marching Cleopatra's children in chains. Present in these triumphs was his nephew, Marcellus, Octavian's chosen heir, together with his stepson, Tiberius, whom hated triumphs, hated people, hated being alive, but he was Octavian's stepson, so he had to act a part. But just as Octavian's unrivaled accomplishments and republican virtues made him popular with the plebs, so had he driven his enemies to the edge of envy and resentment. They were revolted by the existence of someone so perfect, even more so one whom they owed their lives to. Unable to bear the thought of Octavian returning to Rome triumphant once more, a conspiracy was born, led by Lepidus the Younger, with...
Oh no.
Nah, just kidding again.
What is happening here, eh? Kill them.
With the civil wars now truly over, Octavian demobilized 32 of his 60 legions, paying their retirement with Egyptian gold and keeping the other 28 legions up to secure the provinces. To thank the gods, Octavian built a temple to Apollo, while Agrippa built a pantheon for all gods. It would later be renovated by Hadrian into the form we see today in Rome. You know, while he wasn't busy either killing Jews, building walls, or fucking twinks. It was in this time that the Aeneid was written by Virgil, a magnificent historical document that detailed the entire saga from Aeneas' departure from Troy to Octavian's rise to power, displaying Rome's divine destiny to civilize the world and bring forth an eternity of order. And now, with peace having been brought to Rome, Octavian could finally resign his consulship, knowing that he did his part. But once the Senate heard that he planned to resign, they begged him to reconsider, falling on their knees and imploring their master to keep giving.
Alright, what the hell is this? Every time some Roman emperor rises, dominates everything, comes on top like, okay, I'm done, I'm gonna resign now. Why does they always resign? I don't remember any kings or emperors of the past like, I'm gonna resign. They don't resign until they die, man. In the Rome is, constant like, I'm gonna resign. What the hell is this?
The martyrs, some men are truly servile by nature. Octavian was reluctant, having no real desire for power, but if the people's representatives proclaimed him so indispensable, then it was his duty to answer their call. In 27 BC, the Senate convened to grant Octavian 10 years of proconsular authority over Egypt, Spain, Gaul, Syria, Cilicia, and Cyprus, together with the 20 legions in them stationed, and to cement his authority, they granted him a new title. Octavian's full name from there on would be Imperator Caesar Divi Filius Augustus, the Princeps of the Republic and the first Emperor of the Roman Empire. And now that the Republic's institutions had been safely enveloped into the imperial fold, Augustus, as Rome's first emperor, set about the arduous quest of stabilizing the empire's borders, starting with Hispania, whose border guard just had to be ended, and Augustus didn't care how many illnesses he caught while doing it. He then had to square Messina's away after he revealed some information about...
Yeah, he had a weak immune system, didn't he? Surprising he survived all this, because usually in battle and whenever battles are happening, usually people contract lots of diseases. I mean, like, it's surprising they didn't caught any disease and died, because when they said that he has weak immune system, I'm like, is he going to die pretty early? That's what I thought.
A plot to his wife, making him untrustworthy. But he had bigger problems to deal with by then, like that ultra-lethal typhoid fever he just contracted like now. Laying on his deathbed, and with Marcellus being way too young, Augustus proclaimed Agrippa to be the one to succeed his office as princeps. But just as his life hanged on the balance, his medic brought the urn containing Caesar's divine ashes, using it to heal Augustus from his fever. Once healthy again, Augustus oversaw another
What? How did he really survive, man? Because he had a weak immune system. I thought he was gonna die there. How the hell did he survive?
set of reforms to his position. He had no need to be granted continuous consulships, but humbly asked to be nothing more than a permanent tribune, and proconsular authority in whatever province he physically found himself in. And what's a better way to celebrate it than to have your intended heir die of food poisoning, killed by your own wife no less. Why did she do it? To have her son Tiberius be the heir, of course, whom Augustus always kept at the bottom of his list for potential heirs. And with his daughter now widowed, Augustus remarried her to Agrippa, with whom they would have 5 children, among them Gaius and Lucius, whom Augustus adopted as his heirs. In his next step to stabilize the empire's borders, he set to deal with Parthia, as had once Crassus, Caesar, and Antony. Augustus' approach was swift and simple. First, he sent Tiberius to restore Armenia as a client kingdom, then started to deploy more and more legions in Syria, then contacted the Parthian king, offering him a choice. He could either return Crassus's ego standards and agree to peaceful relations, or he could refuse, and have war against the full might of a united Rome with vengeance in their eyes. As you can see portrayed here, the Parthian king then returned all ego standards, and ran back to his desert shithole. And in order to prevent any further conspiracies while Augustus settled the empire's problems, he created the Praetorian Guard. The historians in the audience know well where this will lead, but let's enjoy it while they were loyal bodyguards, because they won't be for fucking long. But Augustus himself would remain uncorrupted, constantly spending his fortunes to build roads throughout the empire, making so that all roads led to Rome.
Now it's a proper empire. You have your capital, you have proper roads that lead to it, now you have proper empire right there.
But there was another issue, beyond the realm of the provinces. It was the hard fact that Rome had become a degenerate cesspool of adultery. Long gone were the traditional conservative Roman families with a strong father and an obedient mother that birthed many children. These days, most Roman women just spread their legs for anything resembling a dildo, refusing to have many, if any, children at all. As a man far ahead of his time, Augustus predicted that such degenerate behavior would eventually bring forth the destruction of the state. So Augustus used his powers to reward all families that maintained their virtues, and punish those who didn't. Not that his anti-degeneracy policies achieved much. He was a lost cause by then. But not for his stepsons Justus and Tiberius though, both of whom married and had their own kids. Among them Germanicus, named so for his father's victories in Germania. What victories, you ask? Well, you see, after a legate got defeated by some invading Germs in Gaul, Augustus had had enough of the barbarians up north. As he surveyed a map of the northern provinces, he concluded the ideal imperial borders were defined by the Danube and Elbe rivers, providing a near impenetrable barrier from the lawless lands beyond. And so, Augustus set towards the quest that would consume the rest of his natural life: civilizing Germania. For this enormous task, he sent
I feel like this is going to be his downfall, huh? I feel like this is going to be his downfall. He's not going there to dominate them, trying to civilize them. So maybe he'll try to, convince them to join Romans or something. Who knows?
both of his stepsons, Tiberius and Drusus, whom assisted each other in finally conquering the Alpine tribes for the empire, extending its borders to include the provinces of Raetia and Noricum. In Raetia, the brothers quickly learned of the Germanic unwillingness of being civilized, expelling as many Germs up north as they could. And while they do that, tell me, remember Lepidus? He just died about nowish, so Augustus inherited his title as Pontifex Maximus. Just saying. And say, do you remember when Augustus conquered Pannonia? Yeah, he sent Agrippa to mop up some resistance there, only for him to be secretly poisoned by Livia and die just like that. The loss of his most trusted general and closest friend broke the emperor's heart, and it was all downhill from here. To secure his family's integrity, Augustus made Tiberius divorce his wife and marry Julia, whom he hated for being an adulterer whore, but the emperor didn't know, so didn't understand why Tiberius was complaining so much as he took command over Pannonia. All while Drusus spent his days campaigning over the Rhine, slaughtering all Germs he could find between it and the Elbe, including the Cherusci, whose prince he took as hostage. And while he would have him killed if he could, Drusus hoped that if a German could be brought from a young enough age into the legions, fought alongside Romans and lived alongside Romans, then he would eventually be civilized. And so, that boy would be raised as a legionnaire, given the name Arminius.
Oh no. Is he the one who's gonna kill Augustus in the end? Why did he do that? Why did he adopt him? I don't understand that.
Back in Rome, Drusus' success was greatly scaring Livia, as he robbed the emperor's attention from her favorite son. And while he was busy renaming a month after himself, Livia bribed a soldier into her service, sending him north. And while Drusus took a stride through the woods, the assassin suddenly knocked him off his horse. Mortally injured, Drusus died a few weeks later, leaving his family at the hands of his eldest son, Germanicus. Drusus' death was yet another heavy blow for Augustus, but by no means the last. Maecenas' death came soon after, leaving him with no old friends to speak of. And to make matters worse, the Parthians were meddling with Armenia once again, and when he sent Tiberius to deal with it, he refused, and exiled himself to Rhodes. Why? To get away from his whore of a wife, that's why. Whom Augustus just didn't realize
Also, Tata is a whore.
for who she was, banishing her and all her lovers from Rome. But thankfully, the emperor still had his grandchildren to rely on, so he sent Gaius to Armenia instead, where Livia would bribe his own soldiers to kill him during a siege. Lucius would later get infected with a fever by Livia's orders while in Gaul, and also die. Postumus, following Livia's advice, grew up to be a vicious little cunt, so he had to be banished. And Julia the Younger, also listening to Livia, became as much of a degenerate whore as her mother, getting banished as well. Livia forgot to ruin Agrippina though, and so Augustus happily married her to Germanicus. But now that Livia had deprived Augustus of just about enough potential heirs, he was forced to recall Tiberius to Rome as his heir, whom, after hearing of Julia's banishment, had no more reasons to exile himself. The only condition was that Tiberius adopted Germanicus as his heir, so that the empire would be ruled by
Man, his own people are his enemy, isn't it? That's just after when you're trying to conquer the world but your own people are your enemy. What do you do after that? That's just effed up, man.
Julians again after him. Yeah, Germanicus won't be long for this world. Back to the provinces, Augustus later sent Tiberius to Pannonia, where a huge rebellion had broken out. And I do mean huge. 1 million rebels, like fuck me dude. Later sending Germanicus to help crush it.
Obviously that would happen. They just recently conquered it, so people would be like, no, we don't want to be part of your empire.
Alongside most of the empire's legions. During the revolt, Arminius would distinguish himself as a competent and loyal soldier, later being promoted to serve beside the new commander of the 3 remaining Rhine legions, Publius Quintilius Varus. With the conquest of Germania so close to being finished, Arminius took this chance that most legions had been sent away, to show his true colors. Maintaining his farce, he convinced Varus to let the German tribes host a cohort each for the winter, having them all slaughtered in his back. Later telling him of a fake rebellion in the north, deep inside the Teutoburg forest. Honor-bound and dismissing his officers' alerts, Varus went down the path Arminius had suggested, crossing a swamp-wild owl formation, surrounded by dark forests, and right into his ambush. With a genocidal drive inherent to their being, the Germanic hordes overran the Romans, slaughtering all the defenseless soldiers, hunting down the survivors in the forest, lives sacrificing the officers to satiate their evil gods of chaos, and destroying every last shred of civilization the Romans had brought with them beyond the Rhine. Betrayed and beaten, Varus grabbed hold of his sword and took his own life. When news of the catastrophe reached,
I knew that. I knew he's going to be the downfall of him. Obviously, it makes sense, man. When Augustus, obviously Augustus' predecessors too, killed lots of Germans. And now he went there and slaughtered lots of Germans too. And he's like, you know what, I'm going to adopt you. Of course, when he grow up and he realizes things, that he's a, German and all these things happen, of course he's going to betray him.
reached Augustus.
It doesn't matter how strong and powerful empire you have. If you are not strong for within, if your own people are your enemy, you can't do nothing, then you're done.
The emperor was broken for a final time, traumatized by the sheer evil displayed by the Germans. He secluded himself in the imperial palace, stopped eating for days and shaving for months, His mission to civilize Germania had failed. The ideal imperial borders would never be reached. Forever the Germans would remain as the irredeemable enemies of all that is civilized and good. As his last years passed by, Augustus would occasionally lay on a dark corner of the wall and scream.
Varus. Oh! Cointus Varus! Give me back my legions!
At the height of his depression, he would pay a secret visit to his last living grandson, Postumus, who had by then repented of his violent ways. But Livia quickly found out and chose to secure her son's position as heir once and for all. As Augustus traveled through Italy, he passed by Nola, the city his biological father had died in so long ago, eating away the figs he so enjoyed. But by then, his wife's poison had already kicked in. Augustus struggled as long.
How did Augustus left his wife alive after all the shits he did? I don't understand that. Most of his issue would have gone by like that if he had just realized and killed her, man.
As he could, but he continued to lose strength, his mind slowly wavering. After a lifetime of transforming Rome from a city of bricks into one of marble, he whispered his final words. Have I played the part well? Then applaud as I exit.
Caesar, Augustus, everybody has last things to say, don't they? Most people just die without saying much or in the middle of something. They always have something to say before they die. That's epic.
Give me back!
What? At this time he just had 1000 subscribers? This is what, his 8th, 9th video? Damn, I thought he would have more by then. Obviously he didn't have enough exposure because this is just next level thing, man. Now he has 100,000, so that's great. Man, Augustus the first emperor. That's... Caesar got betrayed by, adopted son, but in the end he, handled things well. Augustus didn't realize that his own people were his enemy. In the end, that was the downfall of him. But yeah, he truly made the Roman Empire, made all the places together and, created roads that all leads to Rome. So this around this time, it was the proper empire. Obviously, Caesar laid foundation for that. But Augustus made it a proper empire. That just makes you wonder, what would have happened if Caesar wasn't killed like that? Stabbed 27 times? Damn. What if he didn't die like that? How big of an empire would have created? How much would have been conquered? Who knows? Because he, as a military mind, he was just exceptional. So I don't know how much he would have conquered after that. But yeah. What I don't understand is they saw this Livia that she killed a lot of the heirs and also killed Augustus. But Augustus was, Augustus obviously was, great emperor, but he was mostly a great cunning mind because he had the low immune system and wasn't great as Caesar in military tactics. He was great political mind, just cunning person. I know that. The first emperor of Rome, Augustus, was really cunning person. So I don't understand how Livia poisoned all these people. Livia poisoned Augustus and he didn't realize it. And I think that part of the story is which exaggerated. Like if Livia is this person who just poisoned everyone. Well, I don't know, it could be true, but I don't see how she could deceive Augustus this much. But yeah, Augustus' own people was his downfall apparently. Man, the quality of these videos has just gone up. I love it. Every time there is always a great scene where every video ends and he ends the story awesomely. So now it's all half an hour video, so I'm loving it. It's more detailed than the previous videos. So I'm liking it. Alright, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe.